They told you the world rewards obedience, but somehow your name kept appearing where silent decisions are made. Strange, isn't it? You never asked for attention, yet whispers travel faster than your footsteps. The people who dismissed you yesterday suddenly study your every move today. Coincidence? Or proof that hidden influence begins long before public recognition? This isn't about secret families or forbidden databases. It's about the unsettling moment when your growth becomes impossible to ignore. In this speech, you'll discover why your presence unsettles people, why your silence speaks louder than their noise, and why becoming unforgettable always comes with a price. The strangest prisons are never built with concrete. They are built with expectations. The moment people decide who you are, they lock that version of you inside their minds and throw away the key. They stop seeing your potential and start seeing a predictable pattern they can control. That's why the instant you begin changing, something unsettling happens. The room feels different. Conversations become awkward. Eyes stay on you a little longer. People who never cared about your existence suddenly start paying attention. Not because you've announced your transformation, but because energy always changes before appearances do. Most people believe attention comes after success. Reality is far more disturbing. Attention often arrives the moment your mindset shifts. Before the money, before the recognition, before the visible victories, something invisible begins to radiate from you. You walk differently. You hesitate less. Your words become fewer but carry more weight. You stop explaining yourself to people who already decided they wouldn't understand. That silent shift creates confusion in those who believed they had already figured you out. Think about how uncomfortable people become when someone refuses to remain predictable. Predictability makes others feel safe because it allows them to anticipate your next move. They know your fears. They know your limits. They know exactly which buttons to press to make you doubt yourself. But when you begin thinking differently, that map becomes useless. Suddenly, they can't read you anymore. And nothing frightens insecure minds more than someone they can no longer predict. This is why you'll notice strange reactions before you ever experience obvious success. The same people who ignored your ideas begin asking subtle questions. They casually bring your name into conversations where it never belonged before. Some become unusually supportive. Others become strangely distant. A few will even try to test you, hoping to confirm you're still the same person they once underestimated. They're not reacting to what you've achieved. They're reacting to what they sense you're becoming. Human psychology is built around patterns. The brain constantly searches for certainty because certainty feels like survival. When someone breaks the pattern you've assigned to them, your mind immediately becomes alert. That's exactly what happens when your identity starts evolving. People aren't responding to your bank account, your status, or your possessions. They're responding to a disruption in the mental image they've carried about you for years. Notice how the loudest people often become quiet around someone who has developed genuine confidence. Real confidence doesn't demand attention. It doesn't argue. It doesn't compete. It simply exists. That silent certainty creates pressure because it forces others to confront their own insecurity without a single word being spoken. Your calm becomes louder than their performance. Many people mistake this shift for luck. They think opportunities suddenly appear out of nowhere. What they fail to recognize is that opportunities are often attracted by perception. The world responds differently when you stop treating yourself like someone waiting to be chosen. Decisions become clearer. Boundaries become stronger. Your time becomes more valuable because you no longer hand it away to everyone demanding access to your energy. The fascinating part is that this transformation usually happens in complete silence. There is no dramatic announcement. No audience applauds the first day you choose discipline over excuses. Nobody celebrates the nights you spend improving while everyone else is distracted. The external world sees only the result, never the thousands of invisible decisions that created it. Yet somehow, even before those results become visible, people begin sensing the difference. Some individuals will admire your growth because it inspires them to improve themselves. Others will resent it because your progress exposes the comfort of their own excuses. They may joke about your ambition. They may question your motives. They may suddenly remember your past mistakes, hoping to pull you back into the identity you've already outgrown. Understand that this isn't proof you're moving in the wrong direction. It's often evidence that your evolution is becoming impossible to ignore. There's another psychological effect that very few discuss. Once your energy changes, people begin projecting their own stories onto you. Some imagine you're hiding a secret. Others assume you received special treatment or extraordinary opportunities. It's easier for them to invent mysterious explanations than to accept that relentless consistency can completely transform an ordinary person. They search for shortcuts because the truth demands accountability. Your greatest advantage during this stage is silence. You don't need to defend your progress. You don't need to convince doubters that you've changed. Every unnecessary explanation leaks energy that could be invested in becoming stronger. Let people misunderstand you if they must. Confusion is often the price of transformation. The more they struggle to define you using outdated labels, the further ahead you'll move while they're still debating who you used to be. Eventually, the whispers become conversations. The conversations become recognition. Recognition becomes influence. But by then, something even more valuable has already happened. You no longer depend on other people's opinions to measure your worth. Their attention becomes a byproduct, not the destination. The shift they noticed before you did wasn't magic, luck, or some hidden force watching your every move. It was the unmistakable signal that your identity had changed so deeply that even the people determined to overlook you could no longer pretend nothing was different. Darkness has a strange way of exposing people. When the lights are on, everyone performs. They speak loudly, seek applause, and decorate their lives with borrowed confidence. But when the room grows quiet and no one is watching, only two kinds of people remain: those desperately chasing validation and those quietly building power. The frightening truth is that the most dangerous person is rarely the loudest. It's the one who no longer needs to prove anything. The world has conditioned people to believe visibility equals value. Social media rewards noise. Crowds celebrate spectacle. People mistake attention for influence and popularity for respect. But real value doesn't announce itself. It grows underground, like roots before a tree ever breaks through the surface. While everyone else is obsessed with being noticed, the strongest individuals are becoming impossible to replace. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces people to confront themselves. Most cannot survive 5 minutes without reaching for distraction. They need constant reassurance that they matter. They crave compliments, recognition, and approval because their identity depends on someone else's opinion. That dependence becomes a weakness. The moment another person controls your confidence, they control your decisions. Now imagine someone who walks into a room without demanding attention. They don't interrupt conversations to be heard. They don't exaggerate achievements. They don't chase acceptance. Yet somehow people keep looking in their direction. That isn't coincidence. Human psychology naturally notices certainty. Real confidence creates curiosity because it is becoming increasingly rare. The interesting part is that people often sense your value long before they understand it. They can't explain why your presence feels different. They simply notice. They become more careful with their words around you. They hesitate before underestimating you. Even those who secretly dislike you begin watching your actions more closely. They aren't reacting to your appearance. They're reacting to your emotional stability. Most individuals reveal everything too quickly. Their fears, ambitions, weaknesses, and insecurities become public knowledge within minutes of meeting someone. In doing so, they surrender mystery. Once people know exactly how you think, predicting your behavior becomes easy. But when you develop the discipline to speak only when necessary, every word begins carrying greater weight. Silence isn't about refusing to communicate. It's about refusing to waste energy. Every unnecessary argument drains focus. Every attempt to convince people steals time from becoming stronger. That's why emotionally mature individuals rarely feel the need to explain themselves. They understand that explanations are often requested not to understand them, but to challenge them. Notice how successful people are constantly surrounded by opinions. Some praise them, others criticize them. Yet the individuals who continue growing rarely stop to respond to every voice. They understand that attention is expensive. Every minute spent defending your reputation is a minute stolen from improving your reality. There's also something deeply unsettling about a person who cannot be emotionally manipulated. When insults no longer provoke you, critics become frustrated. When praise no longer controls you, admirers become confused. They realize they've lost access to the emotional buttons that once influenced your behavior. That independence creates an invisible form of authority. Many mistake quietness for weakness because society celebrates constant expression. But restraint requires greater strength than reaction. Anyone can explode in anger. Anyone can argue endlessly. Anyone can seek revenge. Very few possess the discipline to remain calm while everyone else loses control. That emotional discipline becomes your greatest weapon because it protects your judgment when others are blinded by emotion. People often wonder why certain individuals naturally attract opportunities. They assume it must be luck, privilege, or hidden connections. What they fail to recognize is that reliability and composure create trust. Decision makers aren't simply looking for talented people. They're looking for people who remain steady under pressure. A calm mind inspires confidence because it signals stability. As your value increases, something unexpected begins happening. You become more selective. You stop chasing every opportunity because not every opportunity deserves your attention. You stop trying to impress everyone because you realize most opinions have no impact on your future. This selectiveness isn't arrogance. It's clarity. You've learned that protecting your peace produces greater rewards than winning unnecessary battles. Ironically, the less desperate you become for recognition, the more recognition finds you. The less you seek validation, the more people begin respecting your opinion. That's because confidence cannot be manufactured through performance. It emerges from repeated promises kept to yourself. Every difficult habit maintained in private strengthens an identity that eventually becomes impossible to fake. Some people will misunderstand this transformation. They'll call you distant, cold, or mysterious. Others will invent stories to explain why you've changed. Let them. Their assumptions reveal more about their mindset than yours. You don't owe anyone constant access to your thoughts, your plans, or your energy. Mystery isn't deception. It's discipline. It protects your focus from people who confuse curiosity with entitlement. Eventually, you'll realize that the strongest form of influence has nothing to do with speaking the loudest. It's about becoming someone whose actions consistently carry more weight than their words. By then, your silence will no longer feel empty, it will feel powerful. Because every quiet decision you've made behind closed doors has shaped a presence that no amount of noise can imitate. The most dangerous predators rarely attack first. They watch, they study. They memorize your habits until they believe they've solved the puzzle called you. Then one day, without warning, the puzzle changes. The answers they relied on no longer work. Their predictions fail. Their certainty collapses. And that's the exact moment curiosity transforms into fear. Not because you've become someone else overnight, but because you've become someone they can no longer control. Most people don't investigate what they admire. They investigate what they don't understand. Human psychology is wired to reduce uncertainty. The brain constantly searches for patterns because patterns create a sense of safety. When someone behaves in a way that doesn't fit the expected script, the mind becomes restless. It begins asking questions. Why are they different? What changed? What do they know that I don't? That curiosity isn't always innocent. Sometimes it's the first symptom of insecurity. Think about how people react when you suddenly stop explaining yourself. The person who once defended every decision now simply smiles and walks away. The individual who used to chase approval suddenly becomes comfortable with silence. That shift confuses people. They aren't upset because you've changed. They're upset because the version of you they learned to manipulate has disappeared. Fear has a fascinating habit of wearing different masks. It rarely introduces itself honestly. It doesn't say, "I'm intimidated by your growth." Instead, it disguises itself as concern. It becomes endless questions, unnecessary advice, fake support, or constant observation. Some people begin checking your social media more often. Others casually ask mutual friends about you. A few suddenly become interested in every decision you make after years of pretending you didn't exist. The irony is that they often believe they're simply being curious. They don't recognize the emotional force driving their behavior. Deep inside, your evolution forces them into an uncomfortable comparison. Every improvement you make silently asks them a question they don't want to answer. If they can change, why haven't I? Instead of confronting that question, many redirect their attention toward you. This is why successful people often become the subject of gossip long before they become the subject of admiration. Gossip is the mind's attempt to simplify what it cannot explain. If someone rises beyond the expectations others placed on them, observers search for hidden reasons. They assume there must be luck, favoritism, manipulation, or some secret advantage. Accepting that relentless discipline changed your life would require them to accept responsibility for their own lack of action. Notice how imitation often begins after criticism. Someone laughs at your habits, then quietly adopts them months later. They dismiss your mindset until they realize it's producing results. Suddenly, the same ideas they mocked become acceptable once they can present them as their own. That's another disguise fear wears. It resists first, imitates later. Some individuals will become obsessed with predicting your next move. They'll analyze your words, your routines, your relationships, hoping to regain the certainty they lost. But growth changes more than your circumstances. It changes your decision-making process. You stop reacting emotionally. You begin thinking strategically. That alone makes you incredibly difficult to read. People are comfortable when they know your limits. They know exactly how much pressure it takes before you quit. They know which insults trigger your emotions. They know what distractions pull your attention away from your goals. But once you strengthen your mind, those familiar weaknesses begin disappearing. Suddenly, their old methods stop working. They mistake this emotional independence for mystery when it's actually maturity. There's also a hidden reason why evolving individuals receive so much unexpected attention. Confidence creates psychological tension in insecure environments. A calm person unintentionally exposes anxious minds. A disciplined person highlights careless habits. Someone committed to growth reminds others of the promises they've broken to themselves. Without saying a single word, your existence becomes a mirror reflecting realities people would rather avoid. This explains why criticism often becomes more personal as your progress increases. Logical arguments disappear. Instead, attacks focus on your character, your intentions, or your past. Why? Because your present is becoming harder to challenge. When people can't defeat your results, they often attempt to rewrite your story. The strongest response is refusing to participate in the emotional game. You don't need to answer every accusation. You don't need to correct every rumor. Every moment spent defending yourself is a moment stolen from becoming stronger. Let consistency become your explanation. Time has a remarkable way of exposing the difference between performance and authenticity. Another psychological truth is that people remember the version of you that made them comfortable. They struggle to accept the version that demands they update their beliefs. Changing your identity forces others to change their perception, and many resist that effort because it requires admitting they were wrong. It's easier to insist you've changed for the worse than to acknowledge you've simply outgrown the role they assigned you. As your confidence deepens, you'll notice something unexpected. The people who genuinely support your growth ask fewer questions and offer more encouragement. Those secretly threatened by your evolution ask endless questions but rarely celebrate your victories. Learn to recognize the difference. One seeks understanding, the other seeks reassurance that you're not getting too far ahead. Eventually, you stop viewing their curiosity as a compliment or an insult. You see it for what it truly is, a reflection of their internal world. Some will watch because they're inspired. Others will watch because they're unsettled. Either way, their attention no longer determines your direction. By then, you've discovered a truth that changes everything. The moment people can no longer predict you is often the moment they begin realizing they never understood your potential in the first place. The most unsettling people are not the strongest, the richest, or the loudest. They are the ones whose next move cannot be predicted. Predictability is comfort. It allows people to build strategies against you, prepare responses before you speak, and place invisible limits around your future. The moment you become impossible to read, those limits collapse. What terrifies people isn't your power. It's the uncertainty of not knowing how far that power can reach. From childhood, society quietly teaches you to become predictable. Follow the routine. Think inside familiar boundaries. React the way everyone expects. Smile when they expect to smile. Stay silent when they expect obedience. Explain yourself whenever someone demands answers. Over time, people begin believing they own a blueprint of your mind. They assume they know how you'll respond under pressure, how you'll react to betrayal, and what dreams you'll eventually abandon. That illusion gives them confidence. But something changes when you stop living according to other people's expectations. You begin making decisions that don't require public approval. You stop announcing every goal before you've accomplished it. You no longer reveal every emotion crossing your mind. Suddenly, the blueprint people relied upon becomes useless. Their confidence begins to disappear because certainty has been replaced by mystery. Human psychology naturally seeks patterns. The brain is designed to predict behavior because prediction creates a feeling of safety. That's why people often feel uncomfortable around individuals they can't categorize. If they can't define you, they can't anticipate you. If they can't anticipate you, they struggle to influence you. This isn't manipulation. It's simply the natural consequence of emotional independence. Think about the individuals who constantly broadcast every plan they have. Before taking action, they ask for opinions. Before making progress, they seek permission. Before changing their lives, they announce their intentions to the world. The unfortunate reality is that every unnecessary announcement invites unnecessary judgment. Opinions begin shaping decisions. Doubt begins replacing conviction. Energy that should have fueled action gets wasted defending possibilities that haven't even happened yet. Quiet progress creates a completely different effect. Imagine disappearing into your work while everyone assumes nothing has changed. Weeks pass, months pass. People become comfortable believing you've remained exactly the same. Then one day the results appear without warning. The promotion, the discipline, the confidence, the transformation. To outsiders, it looks sudden. To you, it was built through countless invisible moments no one bothered to notice. This is why mystery is often misunderstood. Mystery isn't pretending to be complicated. It isn't playing psychological games or acting distant for attention. Genuine mystery comes from refusing to make your internal world available for public consumption. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your strategies, or your next chapter. Privacy isn't secrecy. It's protection. One of the greatest advantages of remaining unpredictable is that it forces people to react instead of prepare. Those who once believed they could control your responses suddenly find themselves adjusting to your decisions instead. They lose the comfort of certainty. Every assumption they've built about you becomes questionable. Notice how emotionally reactive people become incredibly easy to manipulate. Press the right emotional button, and you already know exactly how they'll respond. Anger leads to impulsive words. Fear leads to hesitation. Pride leads to reckless decisions. Their behavior follows a script, but someone who has mastered emotional discipline cannot be controlled so easily. They pause before responding. They observe before acting. That pause alone changes everything. The strongest competitors in any field understand this principle. They don't reveal every strategy while preparing. They don't expose every weakness to satisfy curiosity. They protect information until the appropriate moment because timing often determines success more than effort alone. In life, the same rule applies. Every detail you reveal becomes another piece of information someone may use to predict your future. Another reason unpredictability creates power is because it disrupts labels. Society loves labels because labels simplify people. Once someone labels you as shy, weak, average, emotional, or unsuccessful, they stop paying attention to your growth. They continue treating you according to an outdated identity. The moment your actions contradict that identity, confusion begins. People struggle to update the stories they've been telling themselves about who you are. Many individuals fear disappointing others more than disappointing themselves. That's why they remain trapped inside expectations they never agreed to carry. They become prisoners of consistency, repeating behaviors that no longer reflect who they've become simply because change might confuse someone else. But real evolution demands the courage to surprise people. There will always be critics who accuse you of changing. In reality, change is the entire purpose of growth. The version of you that survived difficult seasons was never meant to remain permanent. Every lesson should reshape your thinking. Every challenge should strengthen your judgment. Every setback should refine your character. Remaining identical year after year isn't loyalty to yourself. It's resistance to your own potential. As you become less predictable, something unexpected happens. Your confidence no longer depends on being understood. You stop feeling obligated to explain every decision. Some people will assume you're hiding something. Others will create stories to fill the silence. Let them. People often invent explanations when they don't have access to the truth. Their imagination is not your responsibility. Eventually, you'll discover that unpredictability isn't about confusing other people. It's about refusing to let yesterday's identity dictate tomorrow's possibilities. The less you become attached to the version of yourself others expect, the more freedom you gain to become the person they never imagined you could be. The darkest illusion ever sold wasn't that you were weak. It was that you needed permission to become powerful. Somewhere along the way, invisible voices took control of your decisions. They whispered that you should wait until people approved of your dreams, until the timing felt perfect, until someone more important told you that you were finally worthy. And while you waited for validation, years quietly disappeared. The tragedy isn't that people doubted your potential. The tragedy is that you started asking their opinion before believing in your own. Most people spend their entire lives standing outside doors that were never locked. They knock politely, hoping someone inside will invite them to enter. They wait for approval from family, friends, coworkers, strangers, and critics. They believe confidence arrives as a reward after acceptance, but confidence has never worked that way. It begins the moment you stop asking for permission and start accepting responsibility for your own future. Human beings are naturally wired for acceptance. Thousands of years ago, rejection from the tribe could mean death. That ancient survival instinct still lives inside the modern mind. It explains why criticism hurts more than compliments help. It explains why so many people abandon incredible ideas simply because someone laughed at them. Your brain interprets social rejection as danger, even when your life isn't actually at risk. This psychological trap becomes incredibly dangerous because it disguises itself as wisdom. People tell themselves they're just waiting for the right time. They claim they're gathering more information or becoming more prepared. But often, preparation becomes another name for fear. Every month they delay is another month spent strengthening self-doubt instead of self-belief. Look around carefully. The people who change history rarely begin with unanimous support. In fact, they usually begin with resistance. Every meaningful idea sounds unrealistic before it becomes obvious. Every extraordinary decision appears reckless before it becomes inspirational. The crowd judges based on today's evidence. Visionaries act based on tomorrow's possibilities. One of the greatest mistakes you can make is allowing average opinions to determine extraordinary ambitions. Think about it. The majority of people advising you are often speaking from their own limitations, not yours. They measure your future using the ruler of their past. If they settled for less, they'll unconsciously encourage you to settle as well. Not because they hate you, but because your courage challenges the comfort of their own choices. That's why permission is such a dangerous addiction. Once you depend on outside approval, your confidence becomes rented property. Someone else's opinion decides whether you move forward or stand still. One compliment makes you feel unstoppable. One criticism makes you question everything. That emotional dependence turns your future into something other people can influence without even realizing it. Discipline breaks that cycle. Unlike motivation, discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't negotiate with excuses. It doesn't disappear when circumstances become difficult. Discipline quietly shows up even when excitement has vanished. That's why disciplined individuals appear unstoppable. Their progress isn't powered by emotion. It's powered by commitment. Notice how society celebrates dramatic moments while ignoring ordinary consistency. People admire the successful business but overlook the years of sacrifice behind it. They applaud confidence without acknowledging the uncomfortable conversations, lonely mornings, repeated failures, and countless moments when quitting would have been easier. They want the reward without respecting the routine. The truth is that every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your identity. Every early morning you refuse to waste, every difficult conversation you choose to face, every distraction you decline. These small decisions accumulate until your mind begins believing something powerful. I trust myself. And trust in yourself is worth more than approval from 1,000 strangers. There will always be people who misunderstand your determination. Some will accuse you of changing. Others will say you're becoming too ambitious, too focused, or too distant. What they rarely admit is that your discipline forces them to confront their own lack of it. Watching someone consistently improve creates discomfort for anyone committed to staying the same. Another hidden danger of seeking permission is that it delays action until perfection arrives. But perfection never arrives. Every successful person begins before they feel completely ready. Confidence isn't created before action. It's created because of action. Every uncomfortable step teaches your mind that uncertainty isn't fatal. Slowly, fear loses its authority. You also have to understand that not everyone deserves access to your vision. Dreams are fragile in their early stages. Share them with the wrong person, and unnecessary doubt begins growing before momentum has a chance to develop. Protect your goals until your actions become louder than your announcements. Let your results introduce your ambitions instead of your words. Freedom begins when you realize that your life doesn't require unanimous approval. It requires consistent effort. You don't need everyone to understand your direction. You don't need every critic to become a supporter. You don't even need everyone to believe in you. The only belief that truly determines your future is the one you strengthen through repeated action. One day, people who questioned your decisions will describe your success as obvious. They'll act as though they knew you would make it all along. That's the strange nature of human memory. It often edits out its own doubts once the outcome becomes undeniable. But by then, their opinions will matter less than they ever did before, because you'll have learned the lesson that changes everything. Greatness doesn't arrive with permission. It arrives the moment you stop waiting for someone else to authorize the life you were always capable of building. The cemetery of forgotten dreams is crowded with people who wanted to be remembered but spent their lives trying to fit in. They feared judgment more than regret. They chose comfort over conviction, applause over authenticity, and safety over significance. The cruelest part is that the world quickly forgets those who spend their lives becoming copies. History doesn't remember those who blended into the background. It remembers those who became impossible to replace. Most people think a legacy begins at the end of life. That's the biggest misunderstanding you'll ever hear. A legacy begins the moment your daily decisions become stronger than your temporary emotions. Every choice you make either builds a future people will remember or creates another ordinary day that disappears without leaving a trace. Legacy isn't a monument. It's a pattern repeated so consistently that even time struggles to erase it. The human mind is obsessed with immediate rewards. It wants comfort today, recognition today, success today. That's why so many people sacrifice long-term impact for short-term pleasure. They trade years of potential for moments of convenience. Every distraction feels harmless because its consequences are invisible at first. But invisible habits eventually become visible lives. The person you become tomorrow is already being designed by the choices you make when no one is watching. Think about the strongest people you've ever admired. Chances are, their greatest victories were born from moments nobody celebrated. They faced rejection in silence. They carried disappointment without announcing it. They continued working while everyone else assumed they had already failed. The public only witnessed the outcome. They never saw the invisible battles that transformed an ordinary individual into someone extraordinary. This is where most people quit, not because they're incapable, but because they mistake slow progress for failure. They expect transformation to arrive like lightning, dramatic and undeniable. Instead, it arrives like sunrise, so gradual that many don't notice it's happening until the entire landscape has changed. Real growth is quiet. It doesn't ask for attention while it's happening. It simply keeps building until denying it becomes impossible. Every setback places you at a psychological crossroads. One path leads toward resentment, the other leads toward responsibility. Resentment blames the world, replays old betrayals, and keeps wounds permanently open. Responsibility asks a different question. What can this pain teach me? That single question separates victims from builders. One becomes trapped by the past. The other uses the past as construction material for a stronger future. People often believe that difficult experiences exist only to break them. In reality, hardship reveals parts of your character comfort could never expose. Pressure uncovers discipline. Betrayal exposes wisdom. Failure teaches patience. Loneliness develops independence. None of these lessons feel valuable while you're living through them. But later you realize they became the foundation of everything meaningful you built. Another truth few people accept is that your reputation is temporary, but your character is permanent. Reputation depends on what others say when you leave the room. Character determines what you do after everyone leaves. One changes with opinions. The other remains steady regardless of applause or criticism. If you spend your life protecting your reputation, you'll constantly chase approval. If you spend your life strengthening your character, respect becomes a natural consequence. There will always be individuals hoping you remain defined by your worst chapter. They remember the version of you that was uncertain, emotional, or easily discouraged because that version made them comfortable. Watching you evolve forces them to admit that people are capable of changing. Many resist that realization because it challenges the excuses they've used for years. Don't waste your energy convincing them otherwise. Growth doesn't require unanimous agreement. The most unforgettable people share one hidden quality. They don't allow pain to become their identity. They acknowledge it, learn from it, and then transform it into purpose. Every disappointment becomes fuel. Every rejection becomes direction. Every obstacle becomes proof that they're capable of carrying more than they once believed. They stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "How can this make me stronger?" Legacy is also built through consistency, not intensity. Anyone can work hard for a week. Anyone can stay motivated for a month. Very few people remain committed when excitement disappears and results seem invisible. That's why consistency becomes a competitive advantage. While others constantly restart, disciplined individuals quietly continue. Small victories accumulate until they become extraordinary achievements. Eventually, you'll notice something remarkable. The people who once underestimated you begin telling others they always knew you had potential. The critics who questioned your direction begin studying your methods. The same voices that doubted your future slowly rewrite their memories because success has a strange way of making disbelief disappear. But by then, external recognition no longer defines your mission. You'll understand that influence isn't measured by how many people know your name. It's measured by how many lives become stronger because you refuse to surrender to your own limitations. True legacy isn't built through perfect circumstances or endless praise. It's built through relentless discipline, unwavering purpose, and the courage to become someone whose actions continue speaking long after the noise of the world has faded into silence.